It's still showing. Oh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We appreciate your presence at tonight's City Council meeting as we discuss matters that impact our community. Your participation is invaluable. For the record, today is May 15th, 2025, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'll begin with the roll call. So council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Strew.
Here.
Roden.
Here.
Olvera.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
And Swarg.
Here.
With 6 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank y'all. That sounded great. As a reminder to everybody, we do live broadcast this council meeting. And so would like to welcome everybody that's joining us in person tonight, and also welcome to all those that are joining us as part of the live broadcast. For any individual that is here in the room, if you get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting, I ask that all comments be made from the podium up here and use the microphone there. The reason for that is the individuals that are watching the live broadcast cannot hear the comments unless you speak through the microphone up here at the podium. And if you do get an opportunity to speak, please state your name and whether you're a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch or not, or if you're with an agency here supporting city operations, please state which agency that you are from. And I'd also like to welcome Jim Williams tonight, who's sitting in as city manager, as Scott couldn't make tonight's meeting. So thank you, Jim, for being here tonight. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens to be heard. And we had one individual sign up as part of this, Chris Depke. And sir, you know that if whatever you're going to talk about, if it's not on the agenda, we cannot discuss it as part of the meeting tonight. And also I ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Chris Depke, a 30-plus year resident and member of one of the city committees. In the past several months, the issues of transparency and communications have increased in prominence. I'm there proposing a change to the records-keeping process. This change is to post the recording of all city board, commission, and committee meetings on the city website as soon as practical after each meeting. While kudos are due, the public should not have to depend on Mr. Pieper's reports on a meeting to find out in a reasonable time what transpired at a meeting they could not attend. Currently, one must wait until meeting minutes are available in the agenda for the next scheduled meeting before any information about a past meeting is officially available. For example, the previous TSAC meeting minutes won't be available to see until the agenda packet for the August 6th meeting is available and posted. While I understand only audio recordings are currently available for these meetings, I believe stepping up to video recordings would be valuable to our residents by letting them see and not just hear the proceedings. This would allow them to become more involved and informed about the workings of the city. I have no estimates of any cost this would generate, but assume there would be additional labor and IT expenses. The scope is limited since there's only 1 monthly, 2 quarterly, 1 semi-annual, and other meetings as needed. I'm sure staff can provide estimates for the cost of these options, both audio and video, and hopefully with your consideration and approval can be fit into this year's budget. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for being here as part of tonight's meeting, and thank you for your comments. Mr. Depke was the only individual that did sign up as part of Citizens to be Heard. Is there anybody else here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? All right. We'll move on to our presentations tonight. And our first presentation is the swearing in of new council members. or incumbents and a new council member. How's that? And we'll start with, we'll go down the order, but we'll start with Ruben. If you join me in front of the table. I'm gonna wear glasses. You're fine. Anything special you want to say, or? Happy to be back. Would you face me and raise your right hand, please? I, Ruben Olvera, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of council member, place 3, of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God. And congratulations. Dale. Welcome to council. Anything special that you'd like to say, or?
Just humble and looking forward to
Would you face me and please raise your right hand? I, Dale Pearson, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of council member, place 4, of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God. And congratulations. A new council member. You could put your name tag on. And Dale's trying to up the dress code around here. And we also have your plaque, place 4. Thank you, sir. Scott and Teresa, do you want to join us? No. Are you sure?
This is partially your fault. All you had to say was no.
Anything specific that you'd like to say?
Glad we're keeping the band together, frankly. These past 4 years have been really meaningful, and I'm glad to be part of it. Looking forward to keeping it together for the next 3 years.
Would you face me and please raise your right hand? I, Scott Parker, do solemnly swear
I, Scott Parker, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of council member, place 5, of the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God. And congratulations. And Grant, I thought I saw Grant here. Would you please join? Do you have any of your other Public Works? Whoever's from Public Works that's here tonight, please come join us. Anybody in the hallway? No? They're working. I see Rachel's out there. She's kind of hiding. So next week, the week of May 18th to the 24th, is the nationally recognized week for Public Works Week. And a large portion of our city services are accomplished by individuals within our Public Works Department. This includes the core team for identification, the planning and the management of our projects, our engineering services, our water management, our wastewater management, our maintenance operations, building codes, environmental compliance, code compliance, GIS services, and infrastructure inspection. If you look at anything across the city, it really involves everything, or anything that is done across the city involves Public Works as part of it. And so we have experts and dedicated individuals in all of these areas that I mentioned, serving our residents and really protecting the future for the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. But the one thing that stood out most to me in all of the accomplishments that they have achieved is the personal service that is provided to our residents from Public Works. When discussing with residents about questions or concerns that they may have, they continually reference the individuals in our Public Works departments by their name. And that really stands out to me, amazing how the Public Works Department have integrated themselves into our community while taking care of the residents within our city. Now, I do have one incident that recently occurred that I believe describes the extraordinary mindset of all those that work in Public Works. A couple weeks ago, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a main water line break that occurred on Grand Coteau. It was a lot of pressurized water that was pouring out from the middle of the street, running down the street, and so on. What stood out to me is that this water line break was identified at 7 o'clock at night. And so the call came into the city, and the call was made to Public Works, and within 45 minutes, there was a crew at the site that had begun repairs of that water line break. Later on that evening, I did visit the crew at the site and was amazed at the motivation that they displayed while making the repair. And after working a full day at their normal job, 8 to 4, I think it is, 4:30, and then being called back in, they were still highly motivated to work and ensure that this water line break was repaired. It took them several hours to complete the repair, but they were committed to getting the water service restored to ensure that our residents had the water that they needed for when they woke up in the morning for showers in preparation for the first of their day. Now, I highlighted one incident, but please understand that that dedication, that mindset extends across all of the individuals within the Public Works Department. That their loyalty and dedication that I see every day stands out from our Public Works employees. And so next week, the 18th to the 24th, I ask all residents, as you see our work trucks, and they're easily identified by the orange coolers that stick out the side and the Fair Oaks Ranch emblem on the side of it, that when you see these individuals, please wave to them. Please honk to them, or in any cases, wave them down and stop them. And please thank them for what they do every day. Because we wouldn't be Fair Oaks Ranch the way we are today without our Public Works Department and the personal service that they provide to our residents. I do have a quick proclamation that I'd like to present to Grant. From the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people. These services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals who are engineers, their managers, and employees at all levels of government. It is in the public interest for the citizens, our civic leaders, and our children in the City of Fair Oaks Ranch to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and an understanding of the importance of public works and public work programs. This year marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. So therefore, the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch does hereby designate the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week. And I urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees to recognize the substantial contributions that they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing the quality of life that we have here in our city. So thank you very much, Grant, and please extend to your team the thanks that we have for what they do every day. Out of the way of the podium. I'll take my glasses off. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm thanking you for what you do every day. And now I'll turn it over to Chief. He has 2 presentations tonight.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and neighbors here tonight, and also watching from home. My name is Todd Smith, and I am your Chief of Police. I want to recognize the extraordinary bravery, professionalism, and life-saving actions of 2 outstanding members of the Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department. Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz, if you'll come stand next to me for, as I read through this, I think it's important for everybody to see who we are. Just right over here, please. Their swift and skilled response during a critical emergency on November 3rd, 2024, directly saved the life of a beloved son, brother, and member of our community named Jason. On that Sunday morning at approximately 6:50 a.m., Jason, a 39-year-old man, suffered a sudden and life-threatening cardiac arrest at his family's home. With no pulse and in full cardiac arrest, his situation was dire. His family, which includes a retired cardiac nurse and a former CPR instructor, immediately began life-saving measures, performing CPR and calling 911 at 7:11 a.m. Within minutes, Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz arrived on the scene, demonstrating the rapid response and preparedness that define our department. Without hesitation, Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz assessed the situation, deployed an automated external defibrillator, or AED, and administered 2 life-saving charges to restart Jason's heart. Their calm, decisive actions and expert use of the AED were pivotal in stabilizing him until fire and ambulance personnel arrived to take over. Jason was transported to Methodist Hospital, where he spent nearly a week in the cardiac ICU. Remarkably, thanks to the officer's intervention, he has made a full recovery with no residual effects, a rare and extraordinary outcome in such cases, as noted by the medical staff who cared for him. The father of the family, in a heartfelt letter sent to me, expressed profound gratitude, stating, "The actions of all, but particularly your officers who arrived first and quickly took the steps with the AED, likely saved Jason's life. Everyone, from the EMTs to the emergency room staff to the nurses and doctors on the cardiac ICU at Methodist, are amazed that Jason has no after effects whatsoever given all that transpired." He went on to praise the professionalism and readiness of our department, noting, "Thanks for all that you do to have responsive, well-trained staff on your team. It's a blessing to our city, but on a very personal level, it's a genuine blessing to our family." Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz exemplify the highest standards of service, training, and dedication to protecting the lives of those in our community. Their actions not only saved a life, but also reinforced the trust and appreciation that Fair Oaks Ranch residents have in our police force. The family's letter highlights the department's consistent presence, professionalism, and commitment to safety, from routine patrols to critical emergencies. In recognition of their heroic efforts, it is with great pride that I present Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz with the Life Saving Award. This honor acknowledges their exceptional skill, courage, and compassion in the face of a life or death situation. Their actions on November 3rd, 2024 embody the mission of the Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department to serve and protect, and they have made an indelible impact on Jason and his family. Please join me in a round of applause to celebrate both Corporal Hanley and Officer Paz for their life-saving heroism and unwavering commitment to our community.
You can smile, it's okay. You're allowed to.
Thank y'all very much. Okay. We're gonna have a side entrance for our next guest. This is all right, here we go. This is K-9 Buddy. Yes,
Yay.
yes. Y'all are welcome to stay right there, Dave. That's perfect.
Yeah, he knows who the center of attention is.
Exactly. It's that Kong. Nobody touch it. Also tonight, we gather to celebrate and honor an extraordinary member of the Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department, K-9 Buddy, a 10-year-old Belgian Malinois who is retiring soon after 7 years of exemplary service. Started with us in 2018. Buddy has been more than just a working dog. He has been a loyal partner and a fearless protector for our community. With his keen senses, unwavering courage, and relentless dedication, Buddy has served alongside his handler, Officer David Magnus, with distinction, while detecting narcotics and providing a reassuring presence in our community. Buddy's intelligence and athleticism as a Belgian Malinois have made him an invaluable asset. I want to also recognize Kim Magnus. Kim is married to Officer David Magnus and has played a huge part in Buddy's success. If you've ever seen a police dog in action and the energy and enthusiasm they possess for working, you know it doesn't just stop here. It continues on after work. And I understand what it takes for a supportive team to be able to support a K-9 at home. And so it's important for us to recognize Kim also, because in order for Buddy to perform at his best, Kim's also a supportive team member taking care of him and keeping your husband in line too. Just to point that out. Over his 7 years of service, Buddy has participated in countless operations, helped keep our streets safe, and brought comfort to those he served. His wagging tail and boundless energy have also lifted the spirits of everyone in our department, reminding us of the unique bond between Police K-9 and their team. During his 7 years of service, Buddy has been involved in 134 deployments with 85 seizure incidents involving 77 arrests. As Buddy retires at the age of 10, we reflect on his remarkable contributions and the legacy he leaves behind. He will now enjoy a well-deserved life of relaxation, treats, and playtime, knowing he has made a lasting impression and impact in Fair Oaks Ranch. On behalf of the entire department and the community we serve, we extend our deepest gratitude to Buddy for his 7 years of service. We're also going to be planning a retirement party that is to be announced, so hopefully the community and all of you will join us in doing that at a later date. So please join me in a round of applause for our retiring hero, Buddy. We've also got some birthday treats. Sorry, Kim, you're gonna have your hands full. Somebody over there.
Well, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Didn't want to leave.
Some of us aren't ready to retire.
Yeah. It's awesome. Chill out.
Well, that completes the presentations that we had scheduled for tonight's meeting. We'll move on to our consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda tonight, which is the approval of the May 1st, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. Is there any council member that would like to remove these from consent to consideration? Think I get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Keith, a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Excuse me, Mayor? Who seconded?
Ruben.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. The first item we have up for consideration is consideration and possible action selecting a council member to serve as Mayor Pro Tem until the next regular city council meeting in May of 2026. And I guess I'll just open it up. Do we have any nominations for individuals to serve as Mayor Pro Tem?
I nominate Keith Roden.
That was from Ruben and Dale? Okay. Any other nominations? With all in agreement then, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approval of Keith Roden as our next Mayor Pro Tem, please raise your hand. Keith, you're duly elected as Mayor Pro Tem. And so could I get I'll make a motion that we elect Keith Roden as Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Jonathan, any questions from anyone here in the meeting tonight? Any other discussion items from anyone on council? Then with a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Keith, you are official.
Thank you. I think.
The next consideration item that we have is consideration and possible action approving a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policies. And this is the continuing efforts to finish the overall personnel policy.
Yes, sir.
And I'll pass it back to Jim Williams to lead us through this portion.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. Certainly, these are tough acts to follow tonight, so I'll do my best to keep you going. So your council, this is item 10 in the packet. It's on page 10 in your packet is where it begins, if you want to follow along. So this is the second to last batch of the personnel policy. So we're coming around the home stretch here. Tonight, we're going to go through Chapter 5, employee compensation and advancement. 7 benefits, we're proposing to remove it, and I'll explain it here in just a second. 7 harassment as an ad, and then 16 is just personnel files, kind of how we maintain them. All right, moving through it real quick. So employee compensation and advancement is the current 2006 title of the personnel policies manual. Primary reasons for change, general theme through all of this has been just a general cleanup to match our current practices. We did address the certification stipend and longevity pay. Right now, how we handle it is those stipends, certifications, and longevity pays are broken out into an hourly rate, and we just supplement it on the hourly rate and their pay. We're proposing to take the certifications and stipends, break it out into a bi-weekly pay rate, and then the longevity would just get paid when that employee hits their longevity year. The next pay period, they would see that longevity pay, so as an incentive for retention. And then those certification stipends and longevity pays are already reviewed by the council during the budget process. We're just putting that in the policy to memorialize that. Some other reasons for change in this chapter policy just clarifies the city's pay period, when it starts, when it ends, those kinds of things, when timesheets are due, who's doing what during timesheets, that we have direct deposits, condition of employment, things like that. And then because it's really payroll, we just proposing to change the title to payroll. So that ends chapter 5. Chapter 7, benefits, we're proposing to remove that. The primary reason is since in this whole process of updating the policies, most of the subsections in the 2006 version have been addressed in other chapters. So we'll come back to council June 5th, that's the tentative date, with chapter 1, which will basically have a short summary of the city's benefits package that's provided by the council. And then that paragraph will also say, it'll explain what the benefits are, and then of course it's always subject to council approval and appropriation. So pretty simple. And because we just couldn't leave 7 blank, we had an opportunity to throw harassment in there. We've really needed this for a long time. We don't have a policy on it. And what that does is it fills the need and it aligns with our harassment training campaign. Right now, we're running supervisors and training through annual training for harassment. The key provisions in the policy, it provides just a general policy statement that aligns with state and federal law. We really, back to the same theme of, hey, we're putting a lot on our supervisors now. That's what we want them to do, is be really good supervisors. It outlines what the supervisor responsibilities are, and it also outlines what our training requirements are for this. It provides comprehensive definitions on what sexual harassment and other forms of harassment are, so there's no confusion on if it's happening, what that looks like. And then it also addresses what the reporting requirements would be, what does retaliation look like, and that we don't tolerate that. And it also goes through what the city's responsive action is if there was a harassment claim. Chapter 16, personnel files, again, just general cleanup. Since 2006, we've started, we have electronic files now, and we store them electronically, transmit them electronically, so this has storage and transmittal standards. And then it also clarifies which records we're keeping at PD, which records we're keeping in the HR file, so we don't have duplicates and only keep what's necessary in the right places for efficiency. And it just updates the records content inventories on the last table in the policy. So that's pretty much it for the policy updates on this round. Again, I'll be coming back on June 5th. Well, that's planned right now to come back on June 5th, barring anything else with the final batch of policies. And I'm happy to take questions.
Questions?
I have none this time.
Mr. Roden warned me he had no questions.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? And from council, can I get a motion to approve a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policies?
Move.
Jonathan made the motion and Emily seconded. Any other discussion from council? Then with the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you. I guess you're just going to stay at the podium and lead us through the strategic action plan?
Yes, sir, that's the plan.
All right.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. Again, Jim Williams, Assistant City Manager. And as promised back in April, on April 17th, I'm back for the resolution on the strategic action plan. This item is item 11 in your agenda packet, and it starts on page 49. So this is a pretty quick action. Basically, the decision that's before you tonight is to adopt the FY 25-26 SAP and then get staff working on adopting an updated SAP. So those are 2 action items tonight. A quick recap on the change highlights from last year's SAP. What staff excuse me, staff recognized that we probably need to update our risk management policy. I think that's been in the plan for a while. Take our master road plans and integrate that into our CIP as an action item. Emergency management, training, testing, and evaluation program, get that up and running. Make some communications program, make some enhancements to that so we can do more with less, like automate our social media listening channels, implement some community surveying and polling capabilities. We also recommended crisis communication annex for the emergency operations plan. And then the IT master plan, right now it's a servers and a network refresh. And I say right now, just like all the items that are the change highlights plus any other items, those are all subject to council appropriations. So as we go through the budget process, there may be things that come off, there may be things that come on. We'll deal with that as we get through the budget process. Right now, this just generally gives us the direction we need to get going. So the next steps, we'll integrate these SAP initiatives into the FY 2025-26 proposed budget, which you'll start seeing work sessions on that here shortly. And then the city council will make fund, not fund decisions as we work through all that. And then as that happens, we'll make adjustments to the SAP to match the budget, and we're on our way. Questions?
Everyone's good? Any questions from I'm sorry? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then can I get a motion from council to approve a resolution adopting the fiscal year 2025-26 strategic action plan and direct the city manager to commence efforts to develop a new strategic action plan and present said plan to city council for approval in April 2026.
So moved.
Scott, in a second.
Second.
Ruben. Any further discussion from council? Motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Council, we have a workshop item coming, well, hold on a second. We have a workshop item coming up, and then we have 2 reports from staff. And we do have the individuals from the ESD that are here tonight with the presentation. Would anybody oppose that if we altered the agenda to move the ESD up to the point now so that they could go ahead and do their presentation? And then we'll fall in line with the remaining. Is everybody okay? Jim, would you be okay with that? Okay. Then we'll move to item number 14. And so tonight, from the ESD, we have Commissioner Haygood is here, and Commissioner Lopez Maddox. And then we also have Charles Lawler, who is the administrator for the ESD. And then we also have Chief Ramon in the back, who is the fire chief for the ESD.
Very good. If I may go ahead and get rolling with the mayor's permission.
All yours.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Again, I'd like to congratulate those of you who are new and returning members to the City Council. Heartfelt congratulations. All right, we're the Bexar County Emergency Service District number 4. We like to think of ourselves as your fire department, because we are. All right, we provide fire and rescue to the city of Fair Oaks Ranch. The history of the organization, going back with the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, began, as you may be well aware, with the Leon Springs Volunteer Fire Department, which had long been the provider of fire services to your city. Fair Oaks Ranch entered into a interlocal agreement with us approximately 4 years ago to provide fire service for you, with Leon Springs Fire was our contracted service provider. The Leon Springs Fire Department ceased to exist in October of last year. The employees from Leon Springs Volunteer Fire Department were assumed by the ESD and are now ESD employees. So there's continuity of operations all along. Okay. The ESD-4 operates 2 24-hour, 7 days a week stations. We have Station 132 on Ralph Fair Road. You probably pass that frequently. We also have Station 134 over off of Bernie Stage Road. Fair Oaks Ranch consistently is 25 to 30% of our tone-outs. That is our calls for service. Our EMS runs run approximately 75 to 80% of calls, with a response time of 9 minutes and 13 seconds on average. And if you look at the district, we wanted to give you some idea of what it looks like. You'll see in the upper right-hand portion of the screen, you'll see Fair Oaks Ranch, gray. And the kind of lavender color is the ESD4 boundaries. Okay? Since October 21, we've added a facility. Some of you were there at our grand opening for it. Station 132 on Railfair Road. We've got a number of vehicles. Our ladder truck, we have a new ladder on order. We have engines and pumpers totaling 3 with 2 new engines on order. Ambulances, we have 3 fairly new ambulances, 3 brush trucks, 3 light rescue trucks, 6 command vehicles, and we have state-of-the-art updated rescue and medical equipment. Our personnel from 2020 to 2024 have grown from 1 full-time firefighter to 38 full-time firefighters, paramedics, and command staff. We are a professional agency in every sense of the word. We have 2 station staff 24/7 with 5 full-time and 1 part-time staff each. Future growth. As you're well aware, your city's growing rapidly, and so is the district. To meet that growth, we've secured property along the 10 freeway, and we have plans to construct what will be Station 135. And our plans are now to add a 16,000 square foot, 3-bay station with ladder, pumper, and ambulance. It's along the I-10 eastbound access road at Ranchland View. Many of you have probably seen the sign there. Everybody know where it is? Excellent. Awesome.
What's your time target?
That's a good question. We are working on that as we speak. As soon as possible.
I'm the politician, wait.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
as soon as we can.
All right. Vehicles and equipment. We plan to add engines and ambulances to continue to meet the growth of the area, because we want to keep those response times, that's really good numbers that you saw earlier. And we plan on maintaining major rescue and state-of-the-art medical equipment. And we'll grow personnel as needed to go ahead and staff that equipment and those stations as funding permits. We have a licensed medical director. A lot of people aren't aware of that because we need a medical doctor to oversee our EMS service. We have a licensed medical director who's actually a member of the fire department. He's available 24/7, providing oversight of all EMS services and making sure that our training is up to date, and so is our credentialing. Our ambulances, you'll see a picture of one there. They are, again, state-of-the-art, 3 mobile intensive care ambulances. Our equipment, we have the Zoll Advanced Series cardiac monitors, a mechanical CPR device. We plan on having some IV pumps coming and vents coming soon. The vent is the respiratory version of a mechanical CPR device. We have specially trained paramedics to provide tailored education assistance for clients in home. That's part of our mobile integrated health unit. We're trying to be more than just reactive to the needs of the people we serve. We're trying to be proactive and making sure that they get the best EMS care possible and see if we can't be an advocate for them and get them squared away so that they're not in as much need of EMS services. Again, being proactive. Kind of like what they say in police work with problem-oriented policing. We're doing the same thing in the fire service. We're working with the hospitals to assist clients after discharge to make sure proper care is in place. And we're working to meet their everyday needs. And we have part of our mobile integrated health program, the File of Life, which is a card they can carry on with their list of medications and medical issues. Yellow Dot, do they have somebody special needs in their household that our firefighters and paramedics need to be aware of? And we also offer a medication disposal program. All right, one of our ladder trucks, we can't use it to actually fight fires for a number of reasons, okay? But it's really great to show the kids how one works. So as part of our community support program, we do a number of fire prevention and fire education activities with the young people at the schools, at your elementary schools right here in Fair Oaks Ranch. We also provide assistance to personnel here at the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, providing them how to, fire extinguishers and how to properly use them, for example. And we offer fire smoke alarm detector assistance for those people that have trouble putting theirs in and taking care of them. And if you look at the very top, one of our best programs is our child seat inspection and installation program ran by Captain Steve Bittiger. All right, how is it funded? One is through property tax. Right now, ESD 4 has the lowest property tax rate of any ESD in Bexar County. And the max that can be is 10 cents per hundred value. Right now, we're running about 6 cents per $100 valuation. Roughly 50% of our budget is made up through sales and use tax. That in 2019, voters approved that. Now, that does not impact the city of Fair Oaks Ranch because you're outside of the ESD 4 boundaries. So, but for that area outside of the city that are within the ESD 4 boundaries, we collect, again, half our revenue from sales tax. And surprisingly, Amazon has turned out to be one of our largest contributors in our sales tax budget. Our interlocal agreement with Fair Oaks Ranch, again, we covered that. Right now, the funding we receive from Fair Oaks Ranch is roughly equivalent to 2 cents per $100 valuation. And we've begun doing our own EMS runs. You see we have the ambulances. We don't really know what the amount of revenue we're going to be probably losing from that because the data is still fairly new. All right, I thought you might like to see some fire trucks and see what is responding to your city. We have 2 new heavy-duty rescue pumpers set for delivery in June at a cost of $950,000 each, outfitted with rescue equipment. So they do not come cheap. Right now, we have a 1997, is this the one we're using for the communities programs? Yeah, that's the one that you'll see at the schools. We do have a replacement on order. It's $2 million with a 40-month delivery. $2 million to buy a new one. We currently have another one that we picked up from another city that's being refurbished as we speak.
It's a 2000 basically. It's we bought a used truck from Leon Valley. It's basically the sister of this, but it's a 2000 used ladder truck. It's being rehabbed right now.
Ambulances, we're very proud of these. We have 3 new 2024 ambulances, again, state-of-the-art. We placed in service in January of 2025. An ambulance costs $350,000 each, and that's without the equipment contained therein. We have a 2016 light rescue truck, and we have one with water and one without. To get the modern version with the water, it's a $300,000 vehicle. We have brush trucks. We currently have a 2014 brush truck. Replacement would be $250,000. That the last slide, Charles? Very good. So that's, again, you're getting a 100% fully operational fire department, state-of-the-art equipment, and the best trained personnel that you could have here in the state of Texas.
So any questions from council? Go ahead, Keith. I'll come.
Just maybe 2 questions. One is of the fire calls that y'all have dispatched over in the last 12 months, what % of those are within Fair Oaks Ranch City proper?
We covered that on a slide. Was it 25 to 30%?
Yes.
So we're 25, that was on the slide? That's just for Fair Oaks, okay.
That's just for Fair Oaks Ranch.
Little Finer Grain was 27, 28% of our
Okay.
runs into Fair Oaks Ranch property.
And is that EMS same percentage for those?
Hey, Charles.
Yeah.
I apologize, but you're putting out some good information.
Yes,
Sure.
sorry, I'm an engineer, so I like numbers. Consistently over the last 4 years, approximately 27 to 28% of our total turnouts for the district have been runs into Fair Oaks Ranch proper. And then there was another question, I believe.
Yeah, what about ambulance, the EMS so far, that since y'all put that in production, what, late last year, EMS?
So ambulance, we kicked off ambulance on January 1st
Right.
of 2025. We kicked off ambulance service in the Fair Oaks Ranch on April 1st of this year, so we've only got a little bit of data. Historically, total EMS calls, whether ambulance or fire, have been the same both in the district and in Fair Oaks Ranch. So the total combo, 27, 28%. Ambulance runs are 75-ish% of all our total calls, regardless of where they're located.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan?
And I've got two questions as well. I'll just ask them both, and then you can run through them as you see fit. So the first question is, did you have to pick up any new equipment to take us on? And the second question is, was your department eligible for any more grants or grant money for taking us on, or for the fact that taking us on may have necessitated more equipment?
So we haven't taken on additional equipment per se to take on Fair Oaks Ranch. We've been running with equipment we already have. The replacement vehicles, a lot of our fleet was initially purchased when the ESD stood up back in 2007. So those pumper trucks we bought back in 2007 are aging out. Also because of all of the apartments, the 3-story plus apartments we're seeing along IH-10 necessitated the need for our ladder truck. We have been servicing Fair Oaks Ranch with the equipment we have on board as very fresh off the books, right? Since ambulance service is so new, we're seeing a lot of traffic both in Fair Oaks Ranch, outside of Fair Oaks Ranch, that may necessitate the need for another ambulance in the near future. Very, very fresh. I'm sure Commissioner Haygood over here is cringing because I tend to get out in front of myself a little bit. But it's just it's growth, right? As we've all seen it, both in your city and in our district, that we're working to keep up, and a quarter of our runs are into your city.
And as far as the grants?
Really, we've chased a few grants. We haven't been successful as such, because I don't know the exact cause, but a lot of it is we kind of manage ourselves too fiscally well, and we've got a bunch of money in the bank. So the grantors, if you will, look at our total bottom line and say, you guys don't need it.
So do you have a surplus, or do you have a positive budget variance?
We work to maintain a positive budget positive budget. Our total, we have $1 million in reserve right now, not a ton of money. But you never know. You know, I've been a resident of down in Cross Mountain Ranch for 35 years. I remember 200-year floods back in 2000. I remember tornadoes going through and ripping up a bunch of property. So that's our kind of our ready reserve. Too little of it, truthfully. Our ready reserve in case we lose, ad valorem property off our books through some catastrophic event.
Thank you.
And I don't know if that was just an off-the-cuff remark that you had made about when you were talking about the ambulance service, about how much money you expected to lose because of the ambulance service. Is that actually a concern?
Well, if I may, we have good news and yet to be determined news. The good news is most of the persons served in this area, for both Fair Oaks Ranch as well as the district, are insured. That's the good news. The still waiting to find out news is there's obviously a long delay between the time of billing and the time we get paid from the insurance company. So there's a long drag that we have to absorb those costs. We don't yet know what our reimbursement rate is going to be from those persons that take advantage of the ambulance service. So that's yet to be determined.
A fabulous rate of return, typically in the state of Texas, and this is from big cities, et cetera, is 40%. So,
And you knew that when you were going into that
yes.
business, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Ambulance service is not a moneymaker, it's a money loser, and so you find out. But we're now coming to emergencies with the ambulance instead of a fire truck. And so that saves a lot of wear and tear on fire trucks. And also, if someone needs to be taken to a hospital, we don't have to wait for an ambulance, we will take you immediately.
Okay. I just was trying
No,
to
no,
see
no.
what your.
It's an
Yeah,
excellent
we're
question.
We're getting ready to have discussions
No,
going
it's,
down the road. which
it's
is,
an excellent question.
you know.
And you as a policymaker, I owe it to your constituents to make sure you ask those important questions.
Ruben?
I was curious, if you added the city of Fair Oaks Ranch into ESD4, how would the city be in terms of percentage of homes or populations when compared with ESD4? Do you know?
We ran those populations roughly
I can't, population-wise, I'm not 100% sure. I can tell you ad valorem taxation rate, right? So the total property tax values within the ESD, within the district boundaries is roughly 3.3 billion. And Jim can probably correct me if needed, but from what I've seen of the Fair Oaks Ranch ad valorem property tax values, y'all are roughly half the valuations that we
And
are.
the reason I ask is I was just curious if we are 27% of turnouts. I was curious if that was proportional to our size when compared to the rest of the ESD.
We ran those numbers.
Yeah, I've never, the turnouts are consistent, they've been consistent. I've never run the numbers considered from a population perspective, because from a city perspective, the census data, I believe, is a little more in-depth based on your city censuses. The district-wise, I've never seen a good total district census, if you will, for the unincorporated area of the Bexar County that we serve. So
It's estimated around
Can you speak,
45,000
can you speak up,
district.
sir? Could you
Yeah.
speak up there?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's been estimated by the county that for District 4, we have around 45,000 people in District 4.
So that's about right. 25%. We're probably 25% of that.
Yeah, so, of course, that excludes Fair Oaks Ranch
Yeah.
at 45,000, so.
Yeah.
So that's what the county has estimated for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm Ron Haygood, I'm the president of the board, sorry. Thanks.
Dale, do you have a question?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier and showed us the ladder trucks, I believe you call them, and the big ones, the expensive ones. Is that driven by any in regards to the multifamily homes and apartments all up and down 10? And that those are such large investments. Is that spread apart throughout your whole District 4? And/or, would Fair Oaks Ranch ever have a need for a ladder truck like that?
You're picking it up?
I'll let the chief address that.
Hi, I'm Fire Chief Craig Ramon from Bexar County SD4. The question I understand is, will Fair Oaks Ranch ever have a need for a ladder truck? Is that correct? Or are you asking if the population of the apartments is driving the need, or both? Yeah, I'm assuming that drives the need with the more apartments that are coming in, multi-story buildings. And,
Excuse me, Dale, I can't pick you up very well.
Mic on.
while you're trying to get that
There you
figured
go.
out, I'll go ahead and
That's
speak
better.
to the ladder trucks. We had a ladder truck before all of the apartment complexes went up.
That's the public relations ladder that we have that we took out of service. The apartments have driven a need for more ladder trucks, but with ISO ratings and deployment models of modern day, some of the sizes of the homes in Fair Oaks Ranch and in our district are very large. So even though they're single dwelling or single family dwellings, we do utilize the ladder trucks for those as well because of the size of those homes. There's some 3-story homes. In some places, they look 2-story from the front, but when you go around the back, they're actually 3-story. And so there would and is currently a need in Fair Oaks Ranch for the use of the ladder truck. As we progress to grow and add more people, it will become our deployment model that we will send 2 engines and a ladder truck to every fire from our department alone while still relying on mutual aid departments to send their apparatus. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Chief, thank you for your answer.
Anybody else? Good, good. Keith, anything else or questions?
No, I just maybe one last question. What's your total budget annually?
Our total budget this year was in the $6.6 million range.
6.6, okay.
Yeah, and that's, again, we're continuing to try to add, we're continuing to try to add personnel year over year in order to achieve a full complement of 4 people on every engine for emergency responses.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Anybody else here tonight have any questions that they'd like to present to the ESD? Okay. Well, I appreciate Commissioner Haygood. Thank y'all for being here. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Charles, thank you for being here also, and always, Chief Ramon, great to see you. Thanks.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. We've really appreciated the opportunity to be your fire department.
And y'all are welcome to stay. We're going to cover some really interesting budget information. But if you need to leave, you're more than welcome. With
Charles, thanks.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
We'll move from here back to our workshop item and discuss the 5-year financial plan with updates from our last discussion.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So tonight I'll present a follow-up on the city's 5-year financial plan for fiscal years 2026 to 2030. As discussed at the previous council meeting, this plan is not a forecast, rather it provides projected outcomes based on specific assumptions, and it does play a vital role in guiding the budgeting process. The financial model is designed to be flexible and has been updated according to council's guidance. So tonight I'll introduce 3 additional scenarios that reflect council's recommendations. Now the goal is for this plan to lay the groundwork for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. So tonight I am seeking council's input on the 2 main issues of maintaining or amending the reserve policy and determining the funding plan for the drainage CIP. So in the last meeting, I presented a baseline and 2 alternative scenarios. All scenarios started with the same expenditure assumptions. However, the baseline scenario kept the tax rate at that estimated no new revenue rate, and it utilized all reserves to balance the budget. The 2 alternative scenarios included certificates of obligation to fund the drainage CIP. One scenario maintained our reserve at 50%, while the other reduced it to 30%. In both cases, the unallocated fund balance was used for one-time capital purchases and to support operating expenditures to minimize tax rate increases. Now, that baseline scenario demonstrated that the no new revenue rate was insufficient to support the operating budget and maintain an operating reserve. By fiscal year 2030, the operating reserve would decrease to just 5%. Scenario 1 maintained the operating reserve at 50%, resulting in a moderate average tax bill increase by introducing the certificates of obligation to fund the drainage CIP, and it used unallocated fund balance to offset tax increases. And then scenario 2 further minimized tax bill increases by lowering the reserve to 30% and using those funds to support operations. So during our discussion, council directed staff to model additional scenarios that use the unallocated fund balance solely for the drainage CIP and other one-time purchases while setting a tax rate to cover ongoing operations. So scenarios 3 and 4 were developed with this approach, with one difference being the target reserve. One is at 50% and the other is reduced to 30%. Additionally, we did model a hybrid scenario where the tax rate supports continuing operations with minimal use of the unallocated fund balance, while the certificates of obligation fund the drainage CIP and the reserve policy remains at 50%. Now, all the scenarios start with the same expenditure assumptions from the last meeting. However, you'll notice in the packet that fiscal year 26 operating expenditures have been updated to include known increases in public safety dispatch costs and some other items that you'll see in the proposed budget very soon. And then as a reminder, the drainage CIP currently totals a little over $1.6 million over the next 4 years. So the first scenario tonight is scenario 3. It sets a tax rate to support ongoing operations, and it keeps the reserve at 50% using the unallocated fund balance exclusively for drainage and one-time purchases. Excuse me. So revenues are sufficient to meet operating expenditures and maintain the reserve at 50% as shown on the right. As costs rise, we need to allocate more to the reserve each year to maintain that 50% target. So total revenues are higher than expenditures, as you can see on the line chart. The M&O tax rate is structured to support ongoing operations, while the INS rate covers debt from general obligation bonds, which currently includes 2 more issuances. So the average tax bill increases by $362 over 5 years, with a significant spike in fiscal year 28. Now in this year, we're utilizing unused increments on the M&O tax rate to support the increase in operations. And what this means is that we're able to increase the M&O tax levy more than the statutory 3.5% without going to an election. But we are getting up to that adjusted voter approval rate. Due to the increased costs to provide critical services such as fire and EMS, and the required savings to maintain a 50% operating reserve, we have a large increase in fiscal year 28 to catch up, and then the tax rate restabilizes to more incremental increases going forward. Now in scenario 4, the only change is that we've reduced the operating reserve requirement to 30%. So here revenues continue to meet operating expenditures, but the reserve requirement decreases, so we're able to bring in less revenue than what was in scenario 3. In this one, we're left with 16% unallocated fund balance, which would be available for future costs or unforeseen expenses. Here, the average tax bill increases $337 over the 5-year period, and we're able to delay that spike in the M&O levy by 1 year. So now we have that largest increase in 2029. Both that scenario, this one and the prior, use unallocated fund balance to pay for the drainage CIP and one-time purchases, and then they're both setting a tax rate to support the operating budget. So scenario 5, it combines debt funding the drainage CIP and limited use of that unallocated fund balance to stabilize the M&O tax rate and reduce that large spike from the previous scenarios, while still maintaining the reserve at 50%. Capital improvement projects typically have a long useful life, so it is beneficial to spread their costs out over many years to ensure they're paid for by current and future residents. Now this results in revenues meeting expenditures until fiscal year 29, when we utilize some of the unallocated fund balance to stabilize the tax rate. There remains unallocated fund balance equal to 5% of operating expenditures, And we're still increasing taxes incrementally to support the increasing costs of service, but shifting the large infrastructure improvements to the INS rate, it does relieve some of the constraints on the maintenance and operating rate and the operating budget. So with this one, the average tax bill increases by $288 over 5 years. That's inclusive of issuing debt for the drainage because, again, we're spreading those capital costs out and gradually building up a tax rate that can fully support operations without exceeding that voter approval rate. So to summarize, Scenario 3 has the largest tax impact, but we're able to cash fund the drainage CIP and keep the operating reserve at 50%. Scenario 4, it lowers the reserve, but it also reduces the tax impact because we don't have to save as much each year to meet that reserve target. And then Scenario 5 has the smallest tax impact because we've spread out costs for the drainage CIP. We're purposefully using some of the unallocated fund balance for one-time purchases and as a moderate supplement to fund operations and smooth out the tax impacts over time. We're also maintaining the reserve at 50%, and then it leaves a little bit residual of unallocated fund balance remaining. But each scenario does have a year in which we're using our banked unused increments to increase the levy more than 3.5%. However, the amount with each scenario does vary. But really, due to the increased cost of service each year and that we've stayed at or below the no new revenue rate these last couple of years, we have a larger gap to close between revenues and expenditures, and that becomes apparent when looking at the financial plan, over a period of time. So, I am seeking direction on the reserve target and the funding strategy for the drainage CIP. Your guidance tonight will shape the proposed budget, which I'll present at our first council workshop on June 5th, along with a resolution adopting this 5-year financial plan. And that concludes my presentation.
I had a quick question, Summer. So when we went through this, so one of the assumptions that we had when we first laid out the 5-year plan is that we would maintain a no new revenue rate. I think that was...
That was the baseline, yes.
And so now as we've gone through this, and a couple of the comments as we come through this, maybe we have a tax rate right now of 0.2865.
2853, I believe.
2853. Total tax rate.
Yes.
But even when we look at into the future, through all of these scenarios, the tax rate actually goes down, or could go down. So when we talk about increase, it's really the increase in property tax requirements.
Yes, usually the tax rate will go down as appraisal values grow or as we get new properties. What we're showing is not that the tax rate, because those charts show that the tax rate goes down, but the tax bill does increase.
Right.
So as an appraisal values
I just wanted to
increase.
clarify that.
The tax rate has
Either
gone
about the same
down,
or
but the
even
tax
gradual
bill can still
decreases.
increase.
Right, right.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
As part of your assumptions under the, and I don't know if we covered this last meeting, as part of the revenue, you have property valuation percentage increase of 5%. That's over 5 years,
That's 5% annually?
annually for 5 years.
Yes.
Does that assumption take into account new developments that we're looking at or will be looking at, or is it just what we have right now?
So we've done both. We've added in an average for new development. I think we were able to get an average over the last couple years. So that is one piece. And then we did 5% on the current homes. So we did take into account new properties.
Okay. And then can you explain the assumption of a 45% decrease in investment interest? Is that because our unallocated balance is going down?
It's several things.
Okay.
It's that interest rates likely are going to go down. It hasn't decreased as quickly as what we thought. In addition to, yes, spending on our unallocated would go down. Also, you know, the general obligation bond funds that we have, until they get spent, we're making money, but it is a combination of all that. Our funds actually being spent and interest rates decreasing.
Okay.
That was more of a conservative, it is hard to say what interest is going to do.
Okay.
I do not know.
Jonathan?
I think after talking to Scott and going through the budget with him, I think we're pretty conservative on that 5% new homes, and taking into consideration, you know, some of the stuff on the north end of Fair Oaks, it could be as high as 7%. Do you think that would be out of line? Maybe even 10 if these developers really get in and get it done fast?
So for the, yes, for the new, the 5% is what we're saying, assessed values will increase. What we've put into the model for new development, that hasn't taken into account specific properties or subdivisions. It was just looking at our historical amount of new properties added and just taking an average. So it is possible that with new developments coming online, we would see the total taxable value increase. There is a delay though, because, you know, one development, until it gets platted and until you have actually improvements on the lots, you don't realize that assessed value. So from the time a development comes online, we may not actually see that increase in value for 3 years.
And I would say I do like the way that you put it, where, you know, I think that what you're saying is if we cash fund the drainage projects now, then we are forcing current residents to pay for future residents.
Well, capital projects, yeah, usually they'll have a longer life. So, correct, we would be using taxpayers from today, their funds, to fund that drainage project, which will last, you know, 10, 20 years. We would still do regular maintenance, just like we do on all our infrastructure, roads and drainage, but the actual construction of a project, yeah, it will be here 20 years down the road. So usually it does serve a purpose so that current taxpayers are paying their fair share for the years that you're here, and future residents who move in are also paying for that infrastructure.
And I think that if markets stayed the way they are right now, for whatever reason, we could take money at 3% and put it in the markets that we have access to and end up making money on it anyway.
I mean, that's a possibility, but again, I don't know what interest rates are going to do.
Right.
Obviously, we're able to sell tax-exempt bonds, so we do see lower interest rates than, you know, a private party. But
Do we know how much more the drainage project in total would cost if we do debt versus pay cash?
we do, however, I did not bring that. I'm not sure what the total cost over the 20 years is. I wouldn't even want to make up a number right now, so
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So you can't even
I had
ballpark
too many
it.
numbers, I
Okay.
do not remember.
Well, we're going to have to re-review this and approve it, correct? So we could bring it back at that time.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, either way, there is a cost for issuing debt, so there would be that interest that you're paying over the 20 years.
You think it's significant, like when you saw it?
So the model, I believe, is using a 5% over 20 years. Currently, I think our financial advisor said that he's been selling bonds lower than that, but I know we used 5% for the model.
Because I think that there's what you've explained, there's the pros and what Jonathan talked about, there's pros and cons to each. And that's one piece that I'd like to see is how much would it cost if we did the certificates obligation and like total cost and what that difference is.
Okay.
Even though it's spread out.
Yes, sir.
I guess the other elephant in the room, sorry. The other elephant in the room too that we don't discuss very often is the operating reserve, whether or not 50% is a number that we want to stay with as a council going forward. I need some clarity on that, I guess.
So currently, our policy is vague. It doesn't specifically state what the purpose is for, other than it's our reserve. It's our operating reserve. I mean, we all assume it's for emergencies and one-time things that would happen. Since it doesn't actually spell it out in the policy, council can choose to use it for whatever purpose they wish. It would be an action item. 50% is a very healthy reserve. I think I mentioned that GFOA recommends no less than 2 months. We're at 6 months. It does help our credit rating. That's why we do have a AA+ bond rating. Possibly because it is kind of a big topic, something to just change quickly. You know, I mentioned it too a couple meetings ago that we could keep the 50% reserve, but split it up into 2 different buckets per se, and actually develop a policy for each. So we could still have 50% in total, but maybe make one an emergency reserve, drop that down to 30%, 40%, whatever you'd be comfortable with, and dictate specifically what it's for, how it could be used, and how it would be replenished. That would be the most restrictive reserve. The other part, we could just make its own reserve. I had called it a budget stabilization fund. There's other names that you could give it, just another reserve. It could have less stringent rules on it, like to where you could use it for one-time purchases that come up. You could use it for an increase, a large increase in a professional services contract, or just to supplement the tax rate when you need to. You know, it would be up to council, but we could do that to where we're still maintaining 50%, but they had different purposes, and one would be more easily used. And then it could be to where when you do have surpluses, which is you bring in more revenue than you spend, it's a surplus, it could go into that one reserve, and then you would be able to use it, you know, as you see fit.
Go ahead, Keith. I do like that idea of maybe articulating the reserve, actually creating a reserve policy, and maybe taking this 50% and make it into 2 buckets. Because one of the things you mentioned is that we may have things, right now we don't have a real guideline to how we would use it. So if we had we target, and we'll just use for sake of discussion, 30%, which is much more restricted reserve for certain risks that we would try to identify what risks those would be. But the other could be used to offset some unplanned expenses. I mean, you guys get into drainage projects, and you may find that what you thought was going to be $200,000 is going to be, you know, $700,000 for whatever reason. So having those dollars over in this segment to help us so that we don't have to go out and raise taxes for that period just to take care of that one issue, and funding that at being more variable, I think is a good suggestion on y'all's part. And I think that'd be good, and then we could take the restricted reserve if it's 30%, whatever the council and all agree. And that's really targeted for this certain conditions that we can identify. So I think that would be a good thing to come back to us with as council, because I think we all agree we really don't know if 50% is a good number or not, but we certainly don't want to spend it. And then all of a sudden we wake up and we have a big hole in our ability to fund operations, because operations are not going to get cheaper, you know, just by the nature of inflation. So, and I think you asked for that. What do y'all want in reserve policy? And then what I think your second request was, what is your thoughts on funding for drainage? And I do personally think the idea of, Ruben mentioned to compare the two, to see that picture, but long-term funding makes sense for drainage because of the who it applies to. It'd be good to see the numbers.
I do have the numbers now.
Wow.
Sorry, Julie was able to pull it up for me. So we would be, the certificate of obligation would be $1,615,000. That's the total of our current drainage projects. And over 20 years, we would pay $2.75 million.
Okay.
So it is $1.14 million of interest.
Okay.
That's at, actually for Series 20, Series 2025 is 5%. So that's assuming 5% interest, yes.
You said 1.14 over 20 years of interest?
Yes.
And so that 2,750,000 total, which includes the initial funding plus interest,
Yes.
would be, we'd include that in our budget each year in INS rate.
Yes.
So that we'd fund that, whatever that works out to, divided by the term of the bonds, 20, 30 years.
Mhm.
And that would impact our budget just by that 1/30th or 1/20th of that number.
Yes.
Okay.
And I did the math, it's like, assuming I did the math right, I think I did $57,000 a year, I think.
On the payment for that?
No, the interest, like.
Okay,
the
the interest.
interest over 20 years.
Yeah, I'd have to do
like 57.
the math too.
I
yeah.
trust your math over my math.
I liked his math.
I didn't use a calculator, I just.
Much better job, Ruben. So-
Go ahead.
What is the benefit of splitting it up into two buckets? I'm not, aside from us just having a little, better policy or whatever, but is there a financial benefit to the city of having it split up into two buckets? It's still the same amount of money, right? It's just in different buckets. So that's my first question. And my second question is, what would be the impact to our ratings if we did have lower than the 50%? Like, at what point does GFOA go, it's not, I mean, I know you said less than
Well,
2
so-
months, but like, if we went to 30%, would that drop our rating?
So GFOA is just, a national organization that gives good guidelines. They recommend no less than 2 months. Each city would have to look at the risks that their city faces and their tolerance for those risks. It's the bond rating agencies that look at it. And I'll tell you, when we had our bond call last summer, our ratings call, they didn't just look at your operating reserve. They looked at everything that was unassigned, essentially. Our operating reserve, our unallocated, even our reserves for, we have an equipment replacement fund. Those are all savings that we have for specific things. So they looked at all that. And I did explain that we had a plan to spend down that unallocated. And so when we came back at another ratings call, we likely wouldn't have that. So they actually looked at all of our savings, The benefits is that you still have buckets of money. You still have it sitting there for emergencies. I would say splitting them out, having one dedicated for the emergency reserve, that's the one that we know hopefully wouldn't get touched unless a catastrophe happened, whatever those guidelines are. The other one is there since we have been lucky to have surpluses over a couple years that we've been able to maintain. It would still save it and use it more intentionally, whatever council decided, or with the unknown expenses that come up, the different contracts that we have. If we decide to add services that we aren't currently offering, it would just free up that money that council could use more easily than with an emergency.
Yeah, I kind of looked at that, questioned it, because it's almost what we have now. We just don't use the same terminology. We have a reserve. I agree with the comments that we probably ought to define this a little better than we currently have on what we use the reserve funds for. Because what I understand right now, we don't have clear guidance or clear direction policy from council on how we use the reserve fund, correct? And whether we draw it down to 40% and we were to put, a portion of that into another available fund, it's almost, my simple thought process, it's very comparable to the unallocated fund that we currently have today. And we probably, we probably should develop some guidance on how we use that funding also, whether we call it unallocated or another fund that we designated. You had a good terminology that you used for it. would probably set it up in a more professional manner if we designated in that manner, and then provided policy guidance on how that's used. So a couple things on drawing down the reserve. I just have concerns on using our reserve funds for operating expenses. I believe that, and I know there's a balance here and what we're trying to get to, but if we're using our reserve for operating expense and then we're drawing it down to 40% or 30%, what we're really doing is we're supplementing what expenses for operating daily. And at some point, when we get down to that 30%, the reserve's not available anymore. And so the potential, and I think that's why you showed on the graph, there were potential for sharp increases in 28 and 29 as a part of that. The other thing is, say we picked, that's just a concern I have. I believe that, as we go through the budget, and I know this is just a guideline that provides us going into budgeting. And so we're going to take what we have from next year's guidelines that are in here and we'll apply it to the budget. And so in some of that, we ought to be looking at, as we go into each year, maybe reviewing the expenses. And so as we're determining, are there any available areas that we could look at to reduce expenses? And really, that doesn't show in the 5-year planning process because we don't get into that detail, correct?
During the budget process or for the 5-year plan?
5-year plan.
Yeah, in the 5-year plan, it's just accounts, not what goes into all the different trainings
Right,
or all
so-
the different minor equipment.
So really, when we get down to the budgeting process, it may be a time there that we could look at, do we need to balance from the reserve or balance our expenses to determine where it is that we want to land as part of the expenditures and revenues? So as we pull it out and then we go through to September, we can make that a conscious decision at that time to how much do we want to pull from reserve if that's what we want to do? Or is there a requirement that possibly we could reduce expenses at that time so we're not pulling from the reserve? Does that make sense? I don't know, I don't explain it very well, I know, but.
By the reserve, you mean the actual operating reserve, either the 50 or 30?
Yes.
Mhm.
And the other concern I have with that, so say we were to determine, we go through policy guidance and we want to go to 40%. Will we add to the operating reserve every year because our expenses go up, right?
Right.
And so there is a gradual reduction. If we stopped additions to the operating reserve every year, that would automatically start a decline in that percentage from 50% to 40%.
Yes.
I don't know how fast it would happen over the 5-year period. Would we actually go from 50 to 40% without any additions after 5 years? So if we made no additions to the operating reserve starting this year, that percentage, 50%, is going to decline to 48%.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it would,
Just estimating. But at what period does it, if we quit making additions to it, will it get to 40%? Or will that happen in the 5-year period? So there's an automatic, we're talking about pulling from the reserve, but there's also an automatic drawdown in the reserve naturally because we're not adding to it, percentage-wise.
well, each year we have been adding to it because the policy is to maintain it at 50%.
Right.
So.
So if we don't add to it, that percentage is automatically going to drop.
Yes, I don't know how much because I don't have
Yeah,
my
yeah, I'm
calculator to
just-
do each year and how much the expenses are increasing, but that
I
is how
wasn't
it would
trying to
work.
put you on the spot or ask that question. I just.
Yeah. And getting back to the original premise, for me, to understand whether or not the 50% is a goal or if it's something, or just a starting place. So it's, I've always heard that we have to have this at 50%. And the question is as we get into a better definition of how we're going to treat that 50%, or if it's going to get drawn down, it'll be easier for me to be able to make an informed decision, because you know, you can't spend when you don't know what it is that you have to spend. For me, I'd prefer not to accrue $1 million and change in interest if it's something that we can knock back to some extent, you know, and I get it, that's situational, you know, but I think with a strong definition, a strong policy on the reserve, it'll be easier for me to wrap my brain around it, and for everybody else, I think.
Did you have a?
Yeah, I just, a couple thoughts. Did you want to talk? Oh, a couple thoughts I think about is that I agree that, you know, we don't want to draw down reserve at all for operating expenses, but I think we don't know how to use it today. So first of all, we don't know what we can do with it. So we have this, so the first thing is we need to define the policy to what is the function of the reserve. And part of that discussion would be, what are the risks the city faces that it would have to fund that, you know, in terms of what exposures do we have financially. An example would be that, let's if the city hall caught fire and burned down, we don't have to use a reserve because we've got insurance, and that takes care of that. So you'd have to look at things that could happen, risk to the city that we would need immediately to address. And so I think that's why it's important to establish what the reserve really is there, you know, to produce. And in the case once we come to a number, and if we have this, as Summer, you suggested, we have 2 buckets. If indeed we had a bucket that was there also for emergencies, but a little more flexible for, like, if a drainage project went over budget and we didn't have it in our unallocated, we could use it. We would still want to target replenishing that in the next period or keeping it up there, not just to draw it down and keep it to 0. So I do think that the policy is probably the primary goal right now, is to establish what is the purpose of the reserve and how could we use it. And whatever the percent is, we can do that after we know what that policy should be.
Jonathan?
I think that I'm kind of in the same camp that Emily is I don't really see the point of the buckets per se, other than us setting policy that mandates how these funds are spent. But even then, when we do expend these funds, if they are over $50,000, no matter what bucket they're in, it's going to come before council anyway. Is that right?
Well, if we have a reserve policy that says only council can choose how to use that, then it would always come to council.
Whether it's
only
a
you could make the
drainage or
decision.
whatever.
Right. I mean, and we could do that, just have the operating reserve with a clear policy of its intended uses, but leave it to where, yes, council can use it as they see fit, and then how we would replenish it.
If we change nothing right now, it still works that way because of the limits. We've already kind of got that in place, so it's in a bucket where we have to decide what to do with it if it's over 50,000 anyway, right?
But I think the one thing I'd say, Jonathan, and I don't really have a preference of 2 buckets or 1, but the one thing is that we've never been asked to use a reserve, and we've never figured out how to use it. We've just said we've got it. So I guess my big point is let's establish the policy of how it can be used. That's really all I'm at. How we break it up or not, that's secondary, really.
But then your initial question was guidance as to whether, however we call it, is the total amount 50% or 30%, right? And
Well,
I
until the
don't-
policy changes,
Yeah.
it'll be at 50%, and that's what we'll base the budget on.
And everything I've heard is whether it amounts to 50 at the end of the day, whether it's 2 buckets or 1 bucket. I don't know if I'm comfortable just saying we're going to make it 30%.
Well, I think if 2 buckets or 1 bucket regardless,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be 2 buckets, like Summer said. We can have 1 bucket and just say 25% of whatever this bucket is never to be touched. So unless it's for X, Y, or Z. I mean, you can have a policy like that and still have it in 1 bucket. Or you could have 2 buckets, however many buckets you want to have. But
Sounds like 2 buckets.
it sounds like 2.
Lawyer defines it, so, you know.
So many buckets. But I think the whole problem here is whatever it is, 1 bucket or 10 buckets, we need to figure out how we want that to be spent, or the limits we want to place on that in order to determine whether we're comfortable with 50% or 30%. And then I was gonna say something else and I've lost my train of thought. But I do think I agree with Keith, and I think we need to have some sort of language. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. The multiple buckets or policy, I think if it's one bucket, having a clear policy would definitely set the foundation, not just for us and how we use and utilize those buckets, but for the future. So it's, you know, a future council, long after we're gone, doesn't come in and say, you know, oh, we're just gonna, you know, use up all of the unallocated funds for a whole new fleet of city vehicles, even though we don't need them, you know, or something, right? So it drives you to be more fiscally responsible with how you're going to spend that money or save that money.
Sure.
I think the purpose in mentioning splitting them out was really because we have 50% right now, and we have unallocated. 50% has been talked about. Is it too high? Maybe we don't need so much. And we've historically tried to minimize tax increases. So as a way to not just drop it down to 30, and now that's what you're stuck with and spend the rest, we were like, well, maybe it would be easier to lower the real emergency reserve to 30, but keep this other one so everybody's still comfortable with, you know, we have this money, let's just have dual purposes or one restricted, one less, and not just go and spend that 20%. I think that was just one way we were trying to make it more comfortable to work into possibly decreasing to an emergency reserve that's smaller.
Gotcha. So you're basically saying we have the two buckets, we have the unallocated and we have the reserve, but maybe just renaming them.
No,
And-
so in the two scenarios that council asked us to put together, scenarios 3 and 4, that it's using the unallocated. The unallocated is gone because we're using it on drainage and one-time capital purchases. So in these models, there is no unallocated.
Okay.
In scenario 3, we set the tax rate to cover operations and keep it at 50%. So we're adding a little bit more each year to maintain 50%. That's why it has a little bit of a higher tax increase. But the unallocated's gone.
Basically gone, yeah.
We were spending that on drainage in those scenarios.
So I think tonight what you're looking for is some guidance. We talked about a policy on the reserve and something that we want to do, how to use the reserve. What's the upper limit of the reserve that we want to maintain? And do we want to maintain different levels of reserve usage? So it's kind of really all about the reserve policy. You've asked a question about the unallocated funding that we currently have, and do we want to use that against the drainage projects straight up front, or do we want to go with certificates of obligation? Thoughts on that?
Ruben's suggestion is, I think it would be good to see well, I guess we already saw that,
Yeah.
but, you know, I think we've got some, I don't know, the budget may decide that for us, because we have other increases that are possibly coming our way. So to use that up where there's other things in the wind, I'm not sure I'd be more inclined to do with the debt funding for the moment.
When we talk about the unallocated reserve, my thoughts are we would want to use that on specific projects, whether it was related to the debt or not. What I have a concern about is using that funding to cover the operating expenses.
Right.
Because what that'll put us, you talk about what happens 5-6 years from now, we put future councils in a position where they have no flexibility. Does that make sense? Okay. I would say going forward, you know, from today, we need a model that we really made no decision on 30, 40, or 50% of the reserve. So if we needed a decision, do we just want to move forward with 50%? And then we'll have an opportunity to discuss that as part of the policy.
Until we know more, yes. I think on the conservative side would say that we don't know enough to make that decision from 50 to 30 at the moment. So I think we hold firm and establish the policy and then address it.
That kind of is our current
Right.
policy, so.
Well, define
Or
it.
been,
It's been an undefined policy.
right.
So,
Okay, so for the proposed budget, we'll work with the current policy of maintaining 50%, and that'll be another project that we'll do this year. We have already started, I talked to Councilman Roden about it, drafted some reserve policies, so we can start doing that maybe even the first quarter of the new fiscal year.
Also agree or disagree on, or figure out where we're at on how we're gonna fund the drainage, so that we can tell her, we can kind of knock most of these scenarios out, if not all of them except for one, because I know she's dying for us to just pick one.
When it comes to that is, I do like the idea of not having to force everybody here that's living here now to pay it all up front, but I also don't like the idea of paying over $1 million in interest either. If we did do the debt funding for it, could we, if we have, I'm sure the answer to this is yes, but if we have a year where we have a crazy surplus like we have had in the past, we could use that to pay down early, or can you not pay down early on a certificate of obligation? Meaning, like any loan or,
I don't
whatever.
want to say definitively. I would suspect that you can. It might not be for a certain number of years. I don't know what the refunding rules are on it. But I suspect that you can pay it early. I just don't know how early you could.
Okay.
Could, instead of taking a certificate of obligation over the entire amount for drainage, could you put like half down and then do debt for the remaining half?
Yeah, we can say how much we want to debt fund.
And your scenario is, for 5, it's debt fund the entire thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this something, do you need a decision on this now, or is this something we could carry through to look at as part of developing the budget for this year? Or could we provide,
I would need to know how to put it in the budget.
I like Ruben's idea.
Now, we can start with, if everybody says, yeah, possibly we want to go that route, that's what we will put in the proposed budget. June 5th, we're coming back with the resolution, which is that notice of intention, and we'll have to publish it in the newspaper. It'll say a not to exceed amount of the city is intending to issue X amount of certificates of obligation for water, wastewater, and drainage projects. And just like last year, as we went through the budget process, and we saw how valuations came in, we decided not to issue COs for the drainage last year. And so we didn't. Even though our notice of intent had that dollar amount in there, we didn't actually issue it. So we could just continue down that road of assuming that we will issue COs. We'll put that in our proposed budget for now. And until we were actually to post a sale for the certificates, not till late July, we would have till then to decide.
How much?
but even if we propose it, doesn't mean that we have to,
We're not locked in by.
right.
Yeah, no, even if on June 5th, council approves the resolution saying, here's our notice of intention to issue COs for this, in this amount, even when you do that, you still don't have to.
We don't have to take any
You
of
still
them.
don't have to sell all of them, right,
Or any of them,
or any of them.
right, okay. So in trying to figure out, in laying out the budget, would it be better for an assumption as part of this that we'll pay all in cash? And then with a consideration that maybe as we go through the budgeting process, a portion or all of them could be funded through COs? Or is it better to do it the other way around?
I was working in my head, I thought it was going to be that we would assume debt funding. That's how
Okay.
we would put it into the budget. That's how we'll move forward with the resolution for posting in the paper. And as we go through the budget and you get to hear all the different department budget requests and we see how appraisal values come in, looking at what that does to the tax rate, then through June and July, you can make a final decision on maybe we don't need to, and then we don't, or we do. But I would move forward with 50% reserve and assume debt funding for now until y'all decide not to
Everybody okay
before
with
a
that?
sale.
Well, that's either scenario 1 or 5. So now we've got it down between 2. Is there any way that we can pick between 1 and 5?
Well, I mean, isn't it all scenarios? We just don't, we're gonna do the notice of intention, doesn't mean we're actually gonna do it. We can still cash fund everything on the drainage.
Yeah, even if we
Yeah.
post a notice of intent on June 5th.
Yeah.
We don't have to. Out of these 3 scenarios that I discussed tonight, though, only scenario 5 had debt funding. Scenarios 3 and 4 is what council wanted to see. Use unallocated fund balance to fund drainage projects, and then set a tax rate to support ongoing operations. And then we just modeled the 50% reserve and the 30%, which just has a tax rate impact. It decreases your taxes because it freed up some money that
Sure.
you didn't have to charge taxes for. So,
I'm comfortable with that,
5.
with 5, yeah.
I wrote down 5
I
from
like
the very
5 from the beginning.
Yeah,
Me
I
too.
think it
So
provides
we're on
us
the
the
same page.
flexibility
All
we
this.
Go ahead,
Okay.
budget.
Well, and it's a starting point. When we get to the budget, we'll see how the budget rolls out, and then we can make adjustments, so.
Do you have anything else, or, no? Anybody else?
okay, so on June 5th, this 5-year financial plan, it's just a plan. So it's going to come back saying that as of this year, currently, our plan is scenario 5. That, we're intending to debt fund drainage, we're keeping our policy. Each year, we'd go through this model, we can update it as many times as possible. So if things drastically change and we wanted to update our 5-year financial plan at any time, we could. But my goal is to put our plan, bring back the formal document with the resolution
Sure.
saying, here's what we're going with. On June 5th, then we'll also have the notice of intent for the drainage, and actually for all the certificates of obligation. And then we'll actually have our first budget workshop also on public safety and public works. So it'll be, you'll see me a whole lot for the next 20 council meetings.
You look happier now, so.
I got answers, I got guidance, I'm good, yes.
Hey, Summer, what I would offer, it's been, 2 or 3 years now, we've been working on the 5-year financial plan. And I think, in my opinion, this is the first year that it's really laid out something that we can tell truly what the impact of decisions we're making today are having 5 years from now. And that was really, to me, the importance of why we needed to get something like this in place. So thank you, Julie, for all the hard work that y'all have put into getting it.
Julie created the entire model, and she is the subject matter expert on the plan, so yes.
Anything else you need?
I think
Jim,
that's good
or-
with this one.
Okay. You want to just roll into the,
Yes. Okay. So, now this is the financial update and quarterly investment report for the quarter ended March 31st. And as we reach the halfway point of the fiscal year, these second quarter projections are important because they form the basis for our preliminary budget planning and the year-end fund balance estimates. And then in your agenda packet, you have the full financial statements by fund and account. But I'll start with a couple overall highlights. Year-to-date, general fund revenues total $8.09 million, and approximately 80% of that is from property taxes. Expenditures to date total $5.29 million, and the general fund is projected to have a surplus, which is your revenues over expenditures. That's approximately $8,800, which is considerably better than our budgeted deficit of $469,000. Key accomplishments this quarter include completion of the Tivoli Way drainage project and the final phases of the City Hall renovation. And then the city's utility has generated $2.8 million in operating revenues, and they're projected to add $1.89 million to net position this year, and that's primarily due to the investment in capital assets. I added a couple slides that's from not in your agenda packet. But we're projecting general fund revenues to come in just under budget with the shortfall of less than $4,000. Increases in the property tax levy and interest earnings are helping to offset lower revenues in some other areas. And then this modified chart, it compares major revenue categories year over year and against the current budget. So this just really illustrates the city's reliance on property taxes to support general fund operations. But for property taxes, of the $7.6 million levy, we've collected 95% to date. That includes funds for debt service. With delinquent taxes included, we're projected to exceed budget by $91,000 in the general fund and $11,000 in the debt service fund. Again, we'll also see the levy increase typically throughout the year as appraisal value protests are settled. So the certified levy usually increases throughout the year. That's why sometimes we'll realize surpluses over budget. Now, sales tax is the second largest revenue source in the general fund, and revenues total $650,000 year to date, which is slightly ahead of last year. However, we may fall short of our budgeted 3.5% growth target. Based on recent trends, a more modest increase of maybe 1 to 2% is likely, but we continue to monitor sales tax each month and will adjust projections as needed. New residential permit activity is down compared to last year, but that was anticipated in our reduced budget. Still, total permit revenues are expected to exceed budget by about $5,000. And budgeted general fund expenditures are $11.51 million, and we anticipate savings of $482,000. That's largely due to personnel vacancies in public safety and public works. But the general fund is expected to close the year with nearly $10,000 surplus. The projected ending fund balance is $7.68 million, and of this, $4.85 million is designated as that operating reserve, which is still equal to the 6 months of operating expenses, and $2.5 million remains unassigned or unallocated. That's where we're projected to end the year at. Moving on to the utility fund shows a combined increase in operational revenues of almost $384,000. That's mostly in the water utility. Water consumption is up 34 million gallons, and drought surcharges have generated $96,000 more than the same time last year. And the wastewater operating revenues are also projected to exceed budget by $81,000. Non-operating revenues are also projected to exceed budget by $95,000. That's primarily from interest earnings. Utility expenditures are projected to come in $61,000 under budget. This includes a $97,000 savings in personnel costs that are partially offset by higher expenses in supplies, maintenance, and operations. I did add this slide also. We are projecting a loss of $294,000 in operating income after depreciation. Now, this is primarily due to the depreciation expense, which reflects the gradual loss in value of the utility's extensive property, plant, and equipment. Since these assets play a critical role in service delivery, their depreciation should be considered part of the overall cost of service. So reviewing net operating income after depreciation helps us assess the utility's long-term sustainability and ensure that utility rates cover total service costs, including those costs to replace or repair assets to prevent system failures. This is kind of a new way to look at operating income. Yes.
And this depreciation, is this one of those schedules where we're actually putting this money to the side to replace when it reaches?
So currently, we are putting money aside to replace vehicles, equipment,
Right.
those types of mobile assets. That depreciation line also includes infrastructure, the depreciation on the water plant, water lines, buildings. It's bigger, the wastewater treatment plant. So that includes those. We currently don't set aside money for the replacement of those things. Now, maintenance on these items, is budgeted each year. We do maintain our assets, but overall, recouping the cost of the depreciation has historically never been looked at this way. And it's kind of a precursor for next year coming back and introducing the rate calculation tool that we received from the utility rate study, and really looking at what we may need to do in the future with water rates. But overall, the utility is projected to add $1.8 million to its net position, primarily through capital investments. Now, total net position is expected to reach $20.6 million, and that reflects the utility's total assets less its liabilities, representing its overall financial health. So for the investment update, we began the quarter with $29.9 million in total investments. That's primarily in Tex Pool and Texas Class, and ended the quarter with $28.4 million. Net withdrawals totaled $1.85 million. That was mostly for large capital project payments, and we made the debt service payments on our general obligation bond and certificates of obligation. And then investments earned $312,936 in interest this quarter. Fiscal year to date, investments have earned almost $634,000 in interest. But also the full investment and financial reports will be posted tomorrow on the city's finance department webpage. But that concludes the update. You happy to take any more questions?
Everyone good? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Thank you, Summer.
All right, thank you.
Well, that completes the workshop and report items that we had on the agenda for tonight. From there, we'll move on to any announcements. Are there any council members that have any announcements that they'd like to put out? No? No? Go ahead.
I just want to remind everybody that the last day of school is next Thursday. So, you know.
Summer.
Be on the lookout for kids riding their bikes in the streets a lot more, so.
Else?
Already.
Couple announcements. City Council will hold a special meeting next week on May 20th. That meeting will be held here in this room. That's Tuesday night, I believe, and it'll start at 6:30 p.m. And then a couple of positive recognitions that we had for the city. So Joanna Merrill, the city's Director of Human Resources, received the Texas Municipal Human Resource Association Lone or Almost a Lone Ranger of the Year Award. The prestigious recognition celebrates her leadership and wide-ranging contributions to the city's workforce. Joanna's commitment exemplifies the powerful impact that one individual can have in a small organization, and we're proud to celebrate her well-deserved honor. Is she still here? Or? Nope. And our city secretary office. So we recognized them last week for Municipal Clerks Week. And during the week, the office of Christina Pachocchio and Amanda Valdez received the Municipal Clerks Office Achievement of Excellence Award from the Texas Municipal Clerks Association, which is it's a pretty big deal for them. It recognizes excellence in effective and efficient management of resources. And there's only a few cities across the state that receive this recognition. So thank you for all that y'all do. And Amanda. And in addition to that, our Deputy City Secretary, Amanda Valdez, was named to the list of the Municipal Clerks Honor Roll for 2025. So. And then Casey's up here at the helm. Our city's communication team has also been recognized. The On the Ranch newsletter has been named a finalist for the Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers Award in the e-newsletter category. Fair Oaks Ranch is one of just 3 finalists selected from over 600 nominations. And the winner to that will be announced in June. And then lastly, the city was once again named a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation.
And a formal recognition ceremony will be held in conjunction with our Arbor Day ceremony this fall. And Jim, anything else, announcements? No. Okay. Are there any items that any council members would like added to a future agenda? All right. Christina, anything else that we missed or anything else we need to cover tonight?
No, sir.
And Jim, anything from your end? I have the time now is 8:35 and we are adjourned.